Get ready for that football show with those fantasy guys.
Hello and welcome to week number 9 of that football show with those fantasy guys.
And we are those fantasy guys.
It's been 9 weeks. We are still those fantasy guys. Jay, rolling into this week, tell us what is hashtag trending.
Well, the great thing about this show, as I've said the whole time, between the two of us, we know everything there is to know about fantasy football and agree on nothing.
That's about right.
You are so lucky to be watching this show because it doesn't matter where you are. If you are in first place in your league and you're looking where to cherry pick your spots to secure your lineup in the playoffs, you come to me. If you are desperate to crawl and scratch your way into the playoffs, you have Rick's expertise.
Is that all that's hashtag trending?
Anyways,
are we going to do the segment?
Now we are at the halfway mark. Week 8, the trade deadline is looming. I was just setting us up so when people are listening to what we have to say, the people that are in first, second place know where they need to listen to.
We got it.
All right.
Thank you.
That's all.
That's it. That's all for hashtag trending. Okay, let's move on to key injuries. You're going to see them on the screen. A smaller list this week, more running backs than anything else on the list. We got Alex Smith, Jacquez Rogers, Sean McCoy, Spencer Ware, DeMarco Murray, Larry Fitzgerald, Randall Cobb, Terrell Pryor, T.Y. Hilton, Antonio Brown, Travis Benjamin. I guess there are more wide receivers than there are running backs on this list. Jay, who's jumping out at you from this list?
Well, Spencer Ware is definitely a big one just because that backfield has been murky with Jamal Charles coming back. Now Jamal Charles has undergone another operation, but Spencer Ware is injured, so now we got to look at Sarchandrick West.
Yeah, there you go.
The Wild West. I mean, so we don't know what's going on there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers backfield, we don't know what's going on there, who the person to go to is. Yeah. So there's a lot of issues that we need to look at. LaShawn McCoy's hurt, and Gillis Lee played pretty well against the Patriots.
Sure did, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of information out there that we need to disseminate for you.
I agree, and that's why we have segments like The Hunt for Red October, which is now.
Finding the ultimate sub. This week on buys, we have the Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Houston Texans, the New England Patriots, and the football team from Washington that basically has no relevant football players.
Well, not none, but we didn't list any. For the Cardinals, it affects David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, the Bears, Jordan Howard. What a great game. Yep. What a great game last week. Alshon Jeffrey about to become fantasy relevant, a good buy low candidate. Andy Dalton, Giovanni Bernard, A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert from the Bengals. A.J. Green just looks like the best wide receiver in the NFL. The Texans, Lamar Miller, DeAndre Hopkins, and the Patriots, of course, Tom Brady, LeGarrette Blount, and Rob Gronkowski, all affected. And this segment is all about how you fill in for these players if you have them on your team. Where do you go? Jay, where did you go last week?
Last week, I went across the pond, and I knew this was a mistake. Those games are awful. They're always awful. I don't know why people do it, but I went with Brandon LaFell. He had a catch for 6 yards.
I thought it was a great pick last week. It just didn't materialize. For some reason, one reason or another. I mean, A.J. Green did it all.
Yeah, well, you got A.J. Green. And Tyler Eifert, welcome back.
Yeah, right.
He's also fantasy relevant and a huge player for their offense.
And I think that's probably what killed your pick was all of those targets went Tyler Eifert's way.
Yep.
Last week, I went not as bad, but not great, not up to our high standards. I went with Brock Osweiler. For one of my picks, he was 20 of 29 for 168, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Osweiler looked great compared to his previous performances. And in the first quarter, he looked awesome when he had his listen to this, his number 1 wide receiver, C.J. Fedorowicz. In the last 3 weeks, Fedorowicz has had over 20 targets from the tight end position. That is huge. And going forward, I hope you're listening, That name, C.J. Fedorowicz, not mentioned in the rest of the show, but he's somebody that you can go out and add if you need help at tight end. Got hurt after the first quarter. In the first quarter, he had 43 yards and a touchdown in the first quarter. Got hurt, left the game, will be back next week. They're on a bye this week. He's somebody you can go out and add. The other guy that I told you to play last week was Ryan Fitzpatrick. 16 of 34, 288 yards, and a touchdown. Game flow in both of these games really killed their production. Both teams were losing at halftime, like I said they would be, and both teams came out and ran the ball to establish the lead, which is not what I expected. I thought that there was going to be a lot more passing, but Fitzgerald and Osweiler looked renewed and rejuvenated, and while they weren't the best start out there, Josh McCown was probably the best start off the wire. We didn't know, of course, that he was going to play, but while they weren't the best start, they did score each double-digit fantasy football.
Yeah, I really like what you did there. I think if you could have combined them into one start,
yeah, sure.
You would have had a great hunt for Red October. The other thing, as we mentioned with Brock Osweiler, the stats that you just said about C.J. Fedorowicz being his leading receiver when he has weapons like DeAndre Hopkins, Lamar Miller, Will Fuller. That goes back to what I said a couple of weeks ago when I said this guy doesn't look like he knows what he's doing out there, and he just looks awkward in every single thing he's doing. You have these unbelievable stud weapons, and you're going to the not most athletic tight end in the league.
No, and I agree, but the thing about quarterbacks is when they're struggling, they love their whoopee.
The little binky.
And their whoopee, every quarterback's whoopee is a tight end.
Yep.
And it looks like they're starting to use that in Houston again. Over 25 targets in the last 3 games. Fedorowicz is a guy that can give you production down the stretch.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to this week, Jay. How are you going to come back from Brandon LaFell? How do I pull you back in off that limb?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going out with a guy that has not been as productive in the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to tell you that he is going to be that productive this week.
This should be
I am looking right at you. Jeff Janis, Madden champion, wide receiver, Green Bay Packers, going against the woefully awful, dreadful, atrocious Colts defense. Aaron Rodgers, number 1, is finally hitting his stride. Janis is 6'3", runs like a deer. If you have A.J. Green or Larry Fitzgerald, this is a guy that you're going to be able to put in there and get results. We are already talked about the injuries that we have to Randall Cobb.
Yep.
He's hurt.
Jordy Nelson hasn't looked the same.
Is not at 100%,
He
but
doesn't look the
Aaron
same.
Rodgers is starting to get to 100%. So those targets are going to have to go somewhere, and I'm telling you, Jeff Janis is going to be the guy. I told you last year, it might not have been the week that he had the 2 touchdowns, but I told you a couple of weeks before that he was about to go off, and then in week 17 he had 2 touchdowns. So I think this is about to happen again. If you have one of those stud wide receivers that I mentioned, A.J. Green, Larry Fitzgerald, you can do much worse than Jeff Janis, who's owned in 0.0% of leagues.
Yeah, I like this pick, but only because there is no running game, and they're playing Indianapolis. But there's no running game in Green Bay, and that's where you're seeing the production finally from Aaron Rodgers. But once James Starks comes back, once they find a semblance of a running game, see Aaron Rodgers week 1 through 7. And that's what you can expect the rest of the season. I think Aaron Rodgers, going off topic on every segment so far this week, I think Aaron Rodgers is a good sell high candidate. If you can get something for Aaron Rodgers, I know it's hard after you sat on him all season to let him go now, but he's got a tough schedule coming up. And these guys, like you said, Randall Cobb is down, Montgomery's down. They need to keep going out and finding weapons, and eventually that well is going to run dry. These wide receivers can't get open. They can't run the ball. The offensive line is terrible. The Packers are not a good football team this season. If you can trade away Aaron Rodgers at the height of his value, which is right now, then I would do it. If I had the opportunity, I'm an Aaron Rodgers owner, and if I had the opportunity to do it now, I would sell him high.
I will make you an offer after the show.
I don't like your offers. Let's move on to my pick for this week, who will no doubt perform better than yours.
Has to.
I'm going with Nick Foles. Nick Foles last week was 16 of 22 for 223 yards and 2 touchdowns, coming in relief of injured Alex Smith. Foles stepped in and looked good against Indy's defense.
Imagine that.
But guess what? He's got another good matchup this week. And before the show, we were talking, and you warned me to be careful of the Jaguars. I don't see anything in the numbers or in the game that makes me wary of the Jaguars defense. The Jaguars look like a team that have given up on the 2016 season. They are extremely talented on defense, yet they are allowing 250 yards a game, 2 touchdowns, and 20 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Nick Foles gets the start this week for the Kansas City Chiefs. With all of their running back woes, he has looked, last week he looked more willing to throw the ball downfield to his playmakers. The kid that you
Chris
mentioned,
Conley.
kid that you mentioned last week had a big game last week, will probably have a big game this week. I look for the Kansas City Chiefs to come out and fling it all over the field with the injuries at running back. I think Nick Foles is a great start this week. Owned in 2% of leagues, odds are I'm willing to bet you can go out and pick him up if you have to.
You absolutely can, and I love it if it helps Chris Conley emerge out of the shadow of that slow, trudging run offense that the Chiefs run.
I will tell you this, Travis Kelce, probably the best option
Yep.
in the receiving end of the Chiefs. He finally got going when Foles stepped on the field last week. So that says something right there. Let's move on to tough sits.
Sit down, Waldo.
Last week I said my tough sit was the touchdown-dependent
That's right.
Melvin Gordon. I told you he wasn't going to get a touchdown. He did not get a touchdown.
That clip obviously was not from last week. Melvin Gordon did, however, I will tell you, because Jay is reluctant, had 23 carries for 111 yards against a great Denver defense, and at times looked to be gashing them.
Are you feeling like Melvin Gordon might be turning into a Adrian Peterson circa 2008 or what?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that Melvin Gordon has had a fantastic start to the season, even though he has been touchdown dependent up until this point. I think this is only the second game where he's gone over 100 yards rushing. Another guy that you can sell high on. Let's face it. I mentioned this to you. Melvin Gordon probably isn't going to get 20 touchdowns this season, although he's on pace for that. He definitely could in this offense that keeps losing weapons. But at some point, he's either going to wear down and get hurt, or he's just going to stop being as productive, and they're going to have to find production someplace else. This is a guy where you could go out and you could get a top-flight wide receiver and a decent running back, a 2-for-1, and really help your team. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is, I'm not sure because you said like you had something to say, so go ahead and say it.
Well,
I'll think of what I
was just going to say that as we were discussing at the top of the show where people are, you are as we've mentioned, an Aaron Rodgers owner and a Melvin Gordon owner, and you have now said that both of these candidates are a sell high.
Right.
So what are you looking for as an owner of one of these or both of these in a package deal to get in return?
So for Aaron Rodgers, I've got to get something back that I can start at quarterback. I'm looking for anyone in the top 10, whoever they might be, even maybe a Jameis Winston.
That's what I was going to mention, yeah.
Jameis Winston lands in there. You know, that's another great opportunity for quarterback, wide receiver, tight end production because they've got no running backs. They're down now to what, their 4th and 5th string running backs? And, you know, maybe these guys come out, Barber and Smith, and they have great games and they find production. But maybe they don't, and they still have to move the ball, and that's going to fall back on Jameis Winston's capable arm. I've seen it from Winston. He can do it.
No, I know we're going way off topic here, but looking at someone that's scratching to get into the playoffs, you're looking to trade Aaron Rodgers. You're getting Winston in return, which I think is a great value in so much as we already talked about the schedule. Aaron Rodgers has a brutal schedule.
Right.
Jameis Winston, if you are able to make the playoffs, gets the Saints twice.
Yep.
So obviously that's not a straight up deal. What are you looking for in that package to make you be able to pull the trigger?
So to give up, so that's compensation for Aaron Rodgers, for compensation for Melvin Gordon.
I'm asking, what's the additional? You're not going to do Jameis Winston for Aaron Rodgers straight up.
Oh, sure.
What else are you going to throw into the package?
It depends. I mean, it depends on what else you can get. I mean, if you're looking to do Aaron Rodgers and Melvin Gordon in a package deal, you've got to get back a top 10 quarterback. You know, you've got to get back a stud wide receiver because you got to replace that production from Melvin Gordon. And then you got to get back a viable running back. So, I mean, again, so top 10 quarterback for a top 3 quarterback is good. So you get worse at quarterback, but you get much better at wide receiver because you're trading a stud running back for a stud wide receiver. And then whatever you can work out for a running back that plays.
Like maybe like
has
a Christian Michael.
Possibly, but the problem there is that Michael is a backup running back. With Rawls coming back, you don't know what's going to happen. You know, I would feel more comfortable if you could land like a Terrence West and the backup, Keith Dixon.
So you're looking for a 4 for 2?
Whatever the math works out to. And for all of you that are watching this conversation, this is Jay trying to pick my brain about how he can strip my team of talent.
No, I'm trying to have the people that are struggling for the playoffs relate to the stud players that they have.
You're watching a live on national TV trade negotiation is what you're watching. On
to the next.
Let's move on to this week, Jay.
Hold on. What did you have last week?
Well, last week I told you to sit, not Melvin Gordon. I told you to sit Calvin Benjamin because he wasn't going to have a very productive day. Calvin Benjamin had 2 catches for 73 yards. Now, he caught 1 pass for 53 yards and then was basically shut out the rest of the game, had another catch. So I'll call that a good start. If you're in a standard fantasy league, he got you 7 points. But those were fluky plays. Granted, anytime a guy catches a pass for 53 yards, you can't really call it a fluke. But the fact that he only had 2 catches and both of them were 15-plus yards, I think those were fluky plays. I think it was a good sit. But this week and for the rest of the season, he's definitely a great start, especially with Cam Newton complaining about the refs and getting some traction from league officials and the league office saying that those hits should have been called. I think that they're going to be much more ticky-tack with Cam Newton's calls, and that's going to make defenses pull up. And then they're going to start to flourish, I think, in that passing game. Absolutely. So tell us this week, who you got, Jay?
This week, I'm going right at a guy that had a phenomenal week last week. Last week, I went with a running back going against the Broncos. Didn't work out. But this week, the guy murdered me in my Mighty Bucks. Amari Cooper, I'm looking at you. I can't get revenge. The Bucks can't get revenge. Just tear my heart out.
There it is.
That's brutal.
Well,
nice guess what? Chris Harris Jr. ain't giving that up on one side. Aqib Talib ain't giving that up on the other side. I think the Broncos defense is going to bring the Raiders offense back down to earth. Derek Carr, it's going to be a tough day. Amari Cooper, he's going to have about 3 catches for 43 yards, and that's it.
I don't think so. I think that Oakland is going to be able to move the ball. They're going to score points on that Denver defense. The question is can Denver's offense keep up with the Oakland Raiders? I think the Oakland Raiders are one of the best young offenses in the NFL.
The Oakland Raiders is exactly what the Jaguars were supposed to be this year.
Righto. Let's move on to my pick for this week. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Frank Gore is having a great season.
What?
126 carries for 532 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's a 4.2-yard average, Jay. He's having a good year. Has Frank Gore found the fountain of youth? Maybe, but this week he's found the fountain of sit because he's playing the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have the #1 rushing defense in the NFL this season. They're allowing 68 yards a game, have surrendered only 2 rushing touchdowns in 8 weeks of football. That's 0.23 touchdowns a game. The names that I'm going to read off to you right now, C.J. Anderson, Mark Ingram, and Todd Gurley.
I like those 3 running backs.
All have less points than Frank Gore.
What?
But Frank Gore must sit this week. He's not going to be able to get anything going on the ground. The Colts are going to have to pass because they're going to be losing this game from the start because they've got no defense. Now, here's what I will say. A word of caution with Frank Gore. He catches the ball, as you're seeing in this clip every time he flashes up. 3 of his 5 touchdowns this season are receiving touchdowns. So Frank Gore has the possibility of scoring a receiving touchdown this week, but as a running back, as a #2 ranked running back, the 15th best running back in the NFL, Frank Gore is going nowhere fast in this game.
So let me ask you this. As the 15th ranked running back in fantasy football, I'm assuming you're going with.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Do receiving touchdowns count?
Yeah, they sure do.
Okay.
But they're no guarantee. Again, it's a better chance that he gets a rushing touchdown than a passing touchdown on any given Sunday. This week, I think there's a better chance that he gets a receiving touchdown than a passing touchdown, but he might not get either. If the Colts are chasing points like I think they will be, I don't think that they'll be able to dump it off to Frank Gore unless they get down in the red zone. So just that defense is too good.
I honestly hope he gets 3 receiving touchdowns. That will help me tremendously.
Well, you won't be here next week. I'll be carrying the show by myself, so I'll make sure to put in the personal digs from you to me, from me. If you followed that one, then we can move on to Wall Street. Buy low, sell high, my favorite segment on the show. This is where we tell you about all the great players that you've never heard about that can help your fantasy team immensely. We have a list going on right now of relevant fantasy players that we brought to your attention weeks before they were relevant. I don't have the list in front of me. Maybe I'll do that next week when I have time to fill. But we have a greatest hits list going on Wall Street. I think we will do that next week.
Nice, I like it.
We'll
I'll
talk about
definitely
greatest
look it
hits.
up. This week on Wall Street, I'm going with a buy low with a running back who you've mentioned, with a running back that has been tragically overdrafted for 2 or 3 years. I'm looking at Mark Ingram, who fumbled early in the game, then lost the job basically to a running back that came off the street at the end of last year that took over his job, Tim Hightower. So right now, I feel that Mark Ingram owners, if they're not cutting him, if they're not doing something with him, because there's a tremendous amount of bye weeks this week, the Mark Ingram owner has to fill some slots. He might be cutting him.
Yeah, he's going.
So I think this is a guy you might be able to get for free. And let me tell you what, we've mentioned this 3, 4, 5, 7 times this year. Who do the Saints play in the playoffs?
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, twice in the playoffs. I have zero faith that Tim Hightower holds that job. I think last week was a lesson. I believe it was lesson learned. I think Mark Ingram comes back and has a solid second half of the season. So if you can get him for free and have him versus the Bucs 2 times in the playoffs, that is a great move if you're in first place looking to cherry pick a spot.
I'm more cautious on Mark Ingram than you are. I think that you can't ignore what's happened in the first half of the season. So I think if that's a precursor to what's to come, if I can get Tim Hightower and Mark Ingram on my team, I feel a lot better. Because, again, the coach down there said we have to keep getting Hightower involved. Maybe that's a motivation thing. Maybe it's not. Something's going on there with Ingram. Either he's not getting the right amount of calls to get his wheels going. We know that some running backs like the flow of the game. They like to get 15 carries in before they really get going. Maybe that's Mark Ingram's style. It's not going to happen in this New Orleans offense. You know what I mean? 15 is max for the game.
Right, never mind one player.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, I like the idea of adding Mark Ingram at a low value right now because he's in the past he's been fantasy relevant. But if I'm adding Mark Ingram, I have to have Hightower on my team.
It's going to be hard to get both right now because as one is being dumped by teams,
That's
the
true.
other one is being picked up by that same team.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to give you a buy low right now that no one's really talking about. And it's kind of an interesting buy low because it's not something that usually spurs fantasy value.
I see what you did there with Spurs.
but it does here. Alfred Morris, if you are an Ezekiel Elliott owner, and you have room on your roster for a lot, or you have room on your roster, let me start over. If you are an Ezekiel Elliott owner, or you have room on your roster for a lottery ticket, I think you should go out and add Alfred Morris. The reason why is because Elliott is surrounded by a domestic violence scandal, if you will. And while he's been cleared by authorities, it doesn't mean that he won't face discipline from the league. We've seen it time and time again where the league comes out and disciplines a player even though they're not being held criminally negligent by authorities in whatever community they're facing the charges from. And in the backlash of the Josh Brown, the kicker from the New York Giants, who now it turns out has admitted to beating up his wife or girlfriend, and there was very little discipline handed down for that, you might see the league office say, you know what, Elliott, we're trying to represent a good thing here. We're trying to make good for the bad call on Josh Brown, and we might have to suspend you for a game or two. In that scenario, behind the best offensive line in the NFL, Alfred Morris becomes a stud for 1 or 2 weeks. So if you're an Elliott owner, you have to get Alfred Morris on your team. And if you've got room for a lottery ticket, I think he's a good one to grab.
I like it. I like the outside-the-box reasoning and thinking about it.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with football. Has nothing to do with football. It has everything to do with Roger Goodell in the league office.
And that's why you come here to TFS.
That's right. Let's move on to the Facebook question. We've got a zinger today for you, Jay. Should I start Russell Wilson versus the Buffalo Bills, number 2 ranked defense Buffalo Bills, or Matt Stafford versus Minnesota, the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL? This is a tough call. The question comes from Justin Michael, Ontario, Canada. Jay, we're big up north, eh?
Big up north. I'll tell you what, Justin. This is what I'm talking about. I know the Buffalo Bills is Canada's adopted home team, but if the Buffalo Bills, if they played on primetime Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night, every single game, they would have the 42nd ranked defense because they cannot perform under the spotlight. You know who performs well under the spotlights? The Seattle Seahawks. Big game players on offense and on defense. Russell Wilson is a big game quarterback. They're flying cross country under the spotlights. I will take Russell Wilson in this spot 9 times out of 10. There might be the occasional spot where I might think that I would ever even have Matthew Stafford on my team. But anyways, Russell Wilson.
So Russell Wilson over Matt Stafford this weekend. Good luck, Justin. If you like Facebook and you like the show and you have a question for us that we will read on the show, search TFS or That Football Show on Facebook. Look for the shield. Like us. Watch the show. Share it with your friends. According to Jay, I say keep it to yourself because we're the best-known secret in fantasy football. Let's move on to weekly leagues. Jay, you are killing it in weekly leagues. Please help us win more money from the evil FanDuel.
Killing it in weekly leagues. I'm killing it in your league too, bro. Anyways, this is what I'm saying. Ryan Matthews may have fumbled his job away last week.
Without question.
And not only did Darren Sproles come in and perform, Ryan Matthews has a higher dollar value at this point, and Ryan Matthews might not play. I mean, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals 43 Darren Sproles all day. Book it.
Talk about the fountain of youth. Here's a guy who has stepped into an offense and just taken over that lead back role. By no other reason than Matthews' inability. I don't understand.
Yep.
He can't stay on the field. He can't hold on to the ball. He can't run the ball.
Healthy.
I mean, he looked great last year, right? He shadowed DeMarco Murray.
Yep.
But for some reason this year, it's just not happening. And I love this pick. Even if you're not in a weekly league, I think if you can get this guy on your team.
Oh, absolutely.
In a PPR or a standard scoring league, this guy's money.
Oh, PPR, this guy's awesome. He's out of the backfield catching balls.
Not this guy.
The thing is, he's a little guy, but
Yeah.
he still runs between the tackles. Like when he's in there, they don't shy away from their game plan. It's
Yeah.
not game plan specific.
Right.
It's just the Eagles' game plan, and he's the more effective back. And he's going to be at a lower price, higher value. Go with Darren Sproles and build your team around that.
I love the pick, Jay. That's all the time we have for this week of TFS. You will not be here this week. You'll be kicking your toes up in the sand in paradise. Jay is jet setting off to Jamaica. I will be holding down the fort by myself. Your picks will be on the show. I'll be reading both of them. I promise not to needle you too bad.
Oh, please do. Bring it. Bring it.
In your absence. Jay will be back in week 11. I'll be back next week. Good week. Good week. Good luck. Good week. This week. We'll see you next week.